Howdy folks, welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory and today is Friday, March the 25th, 2016. And I have on the line Mr. Marin Katusa, who is, you can find all of his work over at Katusa Research, and he is the former Chief Investment Advisor at Casey Research. He is a best-selling author or New York Times best-selling author of The Colder War. And I could go on and on about your extensive resume, Marin, but I would just like to welcome you to the show, and I'm really glad that you're here. How are things going with you today?
Fantastic, Rory. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you're here, and I just want to dive right in. And I'm not looking for any predictions, Marin, or to put you on the spot at all. But gold and silver have been moving in a very positive direction this year. But there's still people saying we should be looking for a sizable correction within the next few weeks to next few months. And are we entering into a new realm of the bull market, or are we still moving sideways? How do you see gold and silver playing out over the next few weeks or the next few months?
I call it the consolidation phase. First of all, gold is the currency of kings, and silver is the currency of gentlemen. So, you got to choose which one you want. And usually with the geological formations, you can get sometimes many metals in one ore body. But I much prefer gold. I much prefer tier one world-class projects with tier one management teams. That's been my focus for the last decade or so. It's why we've done very well with our funds. So for your viewers, always look at things, be cautious, but keep an eye on world-class projects, be optimist, but be very cautious. And right now, I still believe, as I've been saying for the last 5 years, there's a lot of volatility in the market, and we right now are still in the consolidation phase.
Okay. And I'm glad that you kind of touched on the miners, because that's where I wanted to head to next. And I've been getting some mixed signals from analysts from all over the place. And they're saying, Marin, that the mining supplies, I'm hearing that gold and silver mining supplies for 2015 are up, they're down, they're flat. And according to your analysis, how did the miners fare in 2015? And more importantly, what should we be on the lookout for in 2016?
So what has happened in 2015 is you have to look at the FX advantage. So because the U.S. dollar had such a strong run in 2015, the foreign producers, so the producers in South Africa, the producers in Brazil, the producers in Australia and Canada and Russia, whose currency is much weaker, they were able to produce more at a lower cost because in U.S. dollars where they sell gold, remember, their currency went lower, so their cost of production dropped. So that's why you saw a lot of these analysts not understanding what really happened, because let's face it, a lot of analysts play poker with, toothpicks. They don't have skin in the game. And realistically, you have a geologist who's an analyst. Well, great. You're a geologist. We respect your ability as a geologist. That doesn't mean you have the right to discuss about financial models or the economy. In university, they called it rocks for jocks for a reason. So when you look at these aspects, you have to really be careful what type of analyst you're listening to and what is he talking about. Now, there could be a great geologist for a specific type of formation, and if he's talking about what his strengths are, then you pay attention. But when I hear geologists start talking about, politics or, the economy, I kind of tune out, especially when these analysts don't have any skin in the game. So there's some quick filters you or any of your viewers can use to assess, does this person really know what the hell he's talking about, or is it just huff and puff? So be very careful who you're listening to. Secondly, is this analyst a paid analyst? Is he a bought analyst by the bankers? Is he paid by the investment bankers? What is their agenda? These are different factors you have to look at. So make sure you always find an independent analyst. And more importantly, you want to listen to people that have skin in the game. They've been around. They've been through these sectors. They've been there, done it and been successful. That doesn't guarantee they'll be successful moving forward, but at least they've seen the roadmap before and they'll know how to navigate through these very volatile waters. So moving forward for 2016, this is what I see. And people, I believe, you'll still see a strong U.S. dollar. But remember, gold is still the currency of kings. Gold will still have a great run. And a lot of people still think in the old way where U.S. dollar is strong, gold has to be weak. That was the case, but we're in a new environment of negative interest rates. So how do you protect yourself in a foreign currency with negative interest rates that if you have cash in the bank? That's why we're seeing all these asset bubbles in real estate, in art, in these dividend paying stocks, because people are so afraid of their life savings. And as these baby boomers are retiring, they're looking for protection of their net worth. And hence why gold is the currency of kings and has been for thousands of years. So I believe moving forward in 2016, I know you said no bold predictions, but look, I've been around here and I've had a lot of skin in the game. My two largest assets that I'm putting things into, real estate, US dollar, and gold. You want those three factors, and I love uranium when it comes to the energy. That's the one energy. And look, I've been around the energy game for a long, long time. Uranium is the most undervalued energy sector, period, in the world. So those are the four things that I want people to understand, that U.S. dollar, for all the U.S. dollar haters out there, go put some cold water on your face and relook at the world. Get rid of your biases. The U.S. dollar is a great place to be, as is gold, as is uranium.
Now, you mentioned real estate and uranium. Now, are you looking at U.S. real estate, or are you looking at real estate in other markets?
Well, what I've always done, I remember my good friend and mentor has been Doug Casey. So
Yep.
you always want to buy real estate in a place that you love to be. That's been one area. What I've done is gone to a place that had a civil war and bought up a lot of waterfront in Europe, in an area called Croatia. That was one interesting aspect, but be very careful on real estate. One thing I learned with Doug Casey was Doug put a lot of money in Argentina and Uruguay, and you have to be on the road a lot, which, luckily Doug, Casey, and I are, but it's difficult having real estate around the world, but buy it undervalued. In certain areas of the world, real estate now is in a bubble. So avoid the bubbles. Be a contrarian when it comes to real estate. You want to buy real estate when nobody wants it. And in most parts of the world right now, the real estate truly is in a bubble. Like you look at Vancouver, you look at Sydney. These are areas that I would tell people to avoid, especially the influx of Asian money. So the Asians are looking at real estate and gold. I think gold's going to have a fantastic run 2016, 2017. And look, whether gold goes to 1120, 1,000, 1,200, that's all consolidation, and it takes a couple of years for this process to go through. But you can't be buying the gold for trade. That's a big, big mistake.
Right.
So this is a long-term trend. Gold is an insurance policy that cannot be devalued. The bankers who've rewritten the rules of economics with negative interest rates, they cannot rewrite the rules of gold. Gold has been around for thousands of years as a store of wealth, as almost an insurance policy, and it'll continue to be so.
Couldn't agree with you more. And there was one thing that you said, that you really like uranium a lot, and I know that sector has been beat up pretty well since Fukushima. But also know that China has announced several years ago that they were going to continue bringing online several nuclear power plants every year for the next several years. And is that what you're basing everything on? And how do you see the situation that happened in Fukushima affecting uranium and the whole that uranium sector as a whole, and what's happening and I believe Russia is coming online with some nuclear power. Is that right?
Yep. So not just them, Saudi Arabia. You look at the UAE. a 2-hour conference call with the president, and they are now 90% done on their 3 reactors.
Wow.
The UAE, yes, basically the Switzerland of the Middle East is going nuclear. Why? Let's ignore all the new growth. Let's look at just the existing growth. I've been fortunate that I've been to every producing mine in North America for uranium, just because of what I do as a living. And the reality here is that if you took away all of the new reactors that are being built, let's just focus on what is currently in production, there is going to be a shortfall for uranium. And the traders know. But what's interesting about all this is the utilities have been very patient on the sidelines. They've been grinding these mining companies. They've been playing the FX angles. And now there's been rumors on the street that, you know what, these companies won't be able to fulfill their obligations because of the costs, and they produce in stronger currencies. Well, then let's look at Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan went from, 20 years ago, a non-issue, to now over 40% of the primary production of uranium globally. It's about 60 million pounds in 2 decades. That's unheard of in any other metal. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Kazakhstan. Let me tell you about it. When I was there many times, you have one ruler for the last 40 years. He's an elderly man. When you have one ruler in an area, regardless of who it is, there's a power vacuum. Things change. For example, look at Cuba. They've opened up now. You got Obama just set foot there. Things change one way or another. But let's think about even more importantly. A lot of people don't know that 40% of the population of Kazakhstan is Russian. A lot of people don't know when you go into the ministry office, the language that all the mines and all of the industry is in is Russian Cyrillic. That's the Russian language. The ones who run all the operations are the Russians, because during the Soviet time, they were the ones that took decades to drill out these deposits. So who do you think is going to have an advantage in Kazakhstan? The Americans, or the West, or the Russians? Come on, let's really be... I know everyone wants to say that USA is number one, and Donald Trump will say he'll get in there, and I find Donald Trump very entertaining. But the point here is that do not underestimate who the long-term ally and neighbor and who's built the infrastructure in Kazakhstan for that uranium. It's the Russians. Yep. So you got 40% of the global production at risk. And there's some serious cracks happening in Kazakhstan as we speak. Now let's talk about the growth of the reactors. Rory, there's one theme that I've been talking about for the last few years, and I've been, in the last 5 years, if you look at it in the interviews I've done, I've been a very bear, saying, look, in my old firm at a conference, I said we're in a deflation for resources. And now, and for the last 15 years, everyone's mantra was, buy what China needs. I'm telling everybody that, no, that's not right. What you want to do is buy things that China can't produce, refine, or manipulate. For example, everybody wanted to buy iron ore because China needed 50% of the world's iron ore. But just like America had quantitative easing, the Chinese are going to have a different form of quantitative easing. What they're going to do is subsidize all of the smelting, the refining, the cost in the factories to produce this, and they're going to dump this into the global markets.
Yep.
So the Chinese can do this with aluminum, they can do this with coal, they can do this with iron ore. That's why I tell people to stay away from these metals. But can they manipulate uranium? No, they can't, because they do not have the domestic production to, first of all, meet their own domestic needs today, never mind their growth moving forward on actually plants that are under construction, not planned plants, but plants that are currently under construction. And secondly, they don't have the refining complex. So really, who's here to play? You've got Australia, and they're teaming up with China to sell the uranium. You got Canada, who's teamed up with the Americans and the Indians. And then you have Russia. Now, Russia, I have a whole chapter in my book about how people can say whatever they want about the Russians. The reality is they've built the infrastructure where they have now about half of the world's uranium resources within their influence, and about half of the refining complex in their influence. So uranium is the one metal that the Chinese government can't subsidize. So you're not going to see the big decreases like in iron ore. That just current plants under production are at risk within 4 to 5 years. The DOE under Obama has been flooding the market with it. That's going to run out.
Yep.
And the HEU agreement ended. This is the perfect storm of events. Hence why, and I didn't even talk about the new, the air apocalypse that is happening in China. They have to diversify. When you got the Middle East nations who are oil rich and they're building nuclear reactors, they see the writing on the wall. So it's a great place to be, but be very careful. Uranium is a very specific metal. It's very difficult to permit and produce. And there's maybe a handful of management teams in the world that you need to consider.
I find it very interesting that the oil-producing countries are moving towards nuclear, and that one item should be a signal to anybody that something's out of balance here, or they see something that most people don't see. And I find that to be a very interesting twist. And I didn't realize that Russia had that kind of infrastructure to refine and to deal with uranium and to bring it to market on that level. Is that, when you said
Rory,
that they was in there, I'm sorry?
Even today, 1 in every 10 homes in America is powered by Russian, or let's say actually more than 1 out of every 10 homes in America is powered by the old Soviet Union resources, if you could buy Kazakhstan and Russia.
Wow.
Of what what America imports, it used to be, the majority from the HEU agreement, but now the Obama changed legislation that only up to 25% can be from Russia. Now they've increased their production, their imports of uranium from Kazakhstan by 89%, basically doubled overnight their imports from Kazakhstan. So you went from, okay, we kind of have a relationship with our enemy. If anyone thinks that Russia and America are allies, they need to read my book.
Yeah.
Putin just made fun of Kerry.
Yes.
Publicly. Kerry's in Russia right now. Mm-hmm. And he said, geez, what's wrong with America if the Secretary of State is carrying his own luggage?
Yes.
And that was a jab. My point here is that the Americans went from an ally importing from someone like Russia to now doubling their imports from someone that depends on Russia, which is Kazakhstan. So they went from bad to worse on the import scale. Mm. They're not doing what they need to do to develop their own resources, because it takes over 10 to 15 years to permit a mine in America because of the NGOs and just the environmental concerns and the misunderstanding of what this is all about. So you look at all of this, that 1 in 5 homes in America is powered by nuclear power. China will get there. India will get there. The rest of the world will get there because they need a diversified energy matrix. You look at places like France, over 50% of their homes are powered by nuclear energy. The rest of the world, you look at China, it's less than 4%. There's a huge amount of growth there. But the reality is where is this uranium coming from? And I believe in 5 years, there'll be 2 markets for uranium. There'll be, in oil, we have many markets, but mainly people quote the Brent oil price, which is the European pricing, which the Middle East go off of. And then you have the American pricing, which is the WTI. I believe that in 5 years, we'll have a similar situation for uranium, where it be the Russian quoted price, and then the rest of the world's quoted price, let's say, the American uranium price. Hmm. Because that is exactly what is setting up. And if you study the history of oil, that is what happened to oil, and this is what will happen to uranium. And you want to position yourself in uranium because there will be a bigger pop in uranium than any other metal.
That's very interesting. I mean, and it sounds like you have a well diversified portfolio of items that you are currently associated with. I mean, I would presume that you are in gold and silver and uranium. And if you don't mind me asking, Marin, I mean, are you a bullion guy? Are you investing in or do you acquire gold and silver for your personal self? And
Well, I
you know
have, you know,
what kind of mining
sure.
stocks? What are you doing with your money right now?
I look
It,
for big leverage now. All my friendly bets in the industry, I always bet in silver coins. There's a famous bet where Porter Stansberry from Stansberry and Associates made a big claim on stage, and I called him out on it, and we bet 100 ounces of silver, and I won that coin. There was a bet between Doug Casey and I where I won. So I always bet, you know, because remember, silver is the currency of gentlemen, so that's why I always bet in coins. So I've got a nice stash of, you know, a bullion, but where I see the biggest leverage, remember, bullion is insurance,
yes.
but when you invest in ounces in the ground with tier one projects, with tier one management teams, that is called upside leverage. That's how you make 5 to 10 times your money in this sector. You're not going to make 5 or 10 times your money in the next 2 years in gold and silver bullion. You're just not. That's an insurance policy for yourself. But I do plan on making 5 to 10 times my money on an investment that I just made in a company that quietly has accumulated almost 10 million ounces of gold and is one of the most undervalued stories. This would be a Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway investment if he was to invest in the resource sector. In Canada, the ticker symbol is BRI. It's called Brazil Resources Inc. And it's led by a management team that I think is going to be very, very famous in 10 to 15 years. They are world class. I've known them for a long time. My fund is the largest investor. We have put millions of dollars, Doug Casey, myself, Rick Rule, backing this management team because we believe Amir and his team have accumulated world class assets. They're undervalued, and they're a world class management team. That's where I'm putting my money right now.
Yeah. So I presume that you don't bet necessarily on the horse, you bet on the jockey.
You have to have both. You see, a lot of people in the business say people, people, people. That's mandatory. But if the person has picked a bad horse, there's only so much you can do.
Well, that's true.
So in this market where I can choose both, I only have 7 investments in my fund.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's over the last 4 years. I'm very, very selective, but I have a very different strategy. I go very, very big. We own over, I don't know, about 15% of this company. We are a reporting issuer. We have added to our position in BRI every year for the last 6 years. That's how you make money in the resource sector. It's looking at big leverage, optionality, and Rory, I'll show you a couple of my tricks that I've learned from the legends in the last decade and a half. Management has to write the same checks as you. They have to be hard dollar invested. When a management team own over 10% of the company, I'm interested. When they're, where their whole upside, not salaries, but investing in the deals, that's big. When they're picking off assets, for example, what BRI did was their one project, the Sal George project, the biggest gold fund in the world in 2011, valued this company that had the Sal George at over $140 million. This other management team spent over $30 million drilling up this deposit. Just 2.5 years later, BRI buys this one project for less than 1/10 the market cap of it was. And now he's got a world-class project that's economic at today's gold prices.
Oh, wow.
That's what smart management teams do. And whether it's serendipity or luck, I call it smart management team. He got a portfolio of projects in this one company that he paid 1/10 of what it was trading at in 2011, where the biggest gold funds in the world, like Sun Valley and Tocqueville, all put up $10 to $20 million each. He picked this up, and now this gold company that has almost 10 million ounces of gold So just off of that, it's a great deal. They have one of the most prospective uranium projects in the Western Athabasca that has a joint venture with one of the world's largest uranium companies called Areva in the Athabasca Basin, where it's the highest grade uranium in the world. So not only do they get an amazing portfolio of gold projects, they've got some of the best real estate in the best area in the world for uranium. And they've got the best partner in the world. You know, there's 3 real world-class uranium producers. You have the Russians, Rosatom. You've got Cameco, the Canadian company, which is the world's largest pure uranium producer that's publicly listed. And then you have the French, Areva. They're partners with Areva. And no one even knows that they have this uranium asset that I believe will be worth more than what the company's trading at today. Once I'm hoping they spin it out, and then you get almost 10 million of gold for free. That's why Warren Buffett would buy this stock, because it's called value investing in the resource sector.
I'm excited. I mean, just hearing you
So
talk
am I.
about
That's why
it.
we put millions of dollars into it.
If you don't mind, Marin, I would like to. I've got one short question, and then I have something that's a lot different than what you may be used to. And
Sure.
do you have just a few more minutes? What makes you do what you do? What gets you out of bed, and what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
My wife's asked me that. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the passion, the love. The money is the report card. I think it's the thrill of the kill, the thrill of the deal, or the art of the deal, finding an undervalued asset that the market hasn't discovered. It is such a rush and a thrill for me personally. When you love what you do, it's not work. And I can do this 18 hours a day and still be excited and go, geez, I should go to bed, missing dinners and lunches because you're so into what you do. I don't know. It's a passion, and I found what I love, and keep going till it stops before it stops being a passion, I guess.
When the fun runs out, it's time to do something else.
There you go.
And now for something completely different. You mentioned Donald Trump a minute ago, and I'm not asking for your take on it. I've got a little slightly different angle. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Love them, hate them, vote for them, don't vote for them. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not concerned with that. What I am concerned with, and what I want to ask you about, Marin, is what appears to be a great awakening by the masses. And how do you see what is happening with the American people? Are they breaking through and beginning to understand the current situation, or are they just following the latest fad? I mean, how do you see all of this with what's happening with the people?
I see 2 things. First of all, the first thing people should be asking is the existing establishment on both sides, whether GOP or the Democrats, should be asking themselves, holy crap, how bad have we been? How screwed up and pathetic have we been for Bernie and Donald to do what they've also done? But the other thing that people have to understand is, if you read history and all that, weapons would always evolve. The success of the Roman Empire was always adapting, evolving their weaponry. But today, every person in America holds the most powerful weapon ever on the planet in their back pocket. And it's a smartphone. It's the iPhone. It's the Galaxy. And with Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and the email and the internet, today people can get access to information that isn't controlled by a select few. I've done all of the big media tours, and the reality, Rory, is when I cracked the New York Times best-selling book, the charts for it, that's when CNN and all the big media outlets, MSNBC and Fox, everybody wanted to get me on. But what I realized was my book was a success because I called it the grassroots. Platforms such as your own, all these different platforms that people gravitate to. People are sick and tired of the CNN and the Fox and all of these mainstream medias, because it is controlled by the advertisements. It's just a big juggernaut. And you combine these two elements, that the existing establishment on both sides became so pathetic, so bureaucratic, so rotten. Combine that now, corrupt, and you combine that with the new technology that someone like yourself can interview someone like me across the world and post it to thousands and thousands of your viewers who are interested in what you have to say. That has never happened before. So we are in an evolution and in a consolidation of power in America. This is exciting, and it's going to continue and change, but nobody knows which direction it's going to go, because every single person can now become a Rush Limbaugh, because they have the access and platform to do it if they choose to.
If they choose to. Thank you for that. That was really... This is why I've been wanting to talk to you for so long.
You bet. Well, look, I enjoyed it. All the best with everything.
And to you as well, Marin. And I really sincerely hope that we can do this again in the not too distant future. I would love to get your take on the election as it starts to unfold, and maybe you'll have some other insights, and we can catch up on the on uranium and gold and silver.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful morning, and I will talk with you soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.